So probably about, I don't know, about 3 months after Chad and I first started dating, we decided we were going to move to California together. We were living in Chicago, which is where we had met, as I talked about, and we just decided that, well, see, he was in a PhD program at Northwestern. He was finishing his first year and wasn't really sure he wanted to finish, and so he decided, I'm going to take some time off. I was finishing my undergrad degree, or would be finishing it the end of the summer, and so we sort of were at this crossroads because he knew he didn't want to stay. I had kind of always assumed that I would move to California, and I don't know why I assumed that. To I've only been to San Francisco one time before, but I really did fall in love with it, and it's kind of the gay mecca, I guess. I don't know. I just always was sort of like, yeah, I'll just go to California. So we went there for spring break. It was in March, and we were kind of like, okay, let's go and see. And so he set himself up with a job interview in Menlo Park with a company he had interviewed with before. We stayed with some friends of his who I had never met before. They were friends of his from Harvard, and they were grad students at Stanford, and so we stayed with them at their place in Escondido Village. And we went out and had a really good time. It was our first major trip together, which is always a little tough. You're learning how to sort of negotiate a shared space with these people, and you're sort of sharing your specific brand of crazy with them, and they're sharing their specific brand of crazy with you. All that really comes out when you're traveling, and I'll talk a lot about travel and different times of travel throughout this podcast. But yeah, so we went to the city, and we spent some time in Golden Gate Park, and went around the city and there was this move as we were sort of planning the move. The reason we went out for spring break was because we were sort of scoping things. Chad was interviewing for this job that I mentioned. We needed to find an apartment and figure out where we could. Are we going to try to live in the city? Are we going to, live down on the peninsula? He ended up getting the job, and I think we found out pretty much right away that he got this job in Menlo Park. So we were like, okay, well, I guess we'll live there because I didn't have a job. So anyway, we're sort of just trying to figure out how we're going to make this happen. And when you're just out of college, you kind of need a little help. I mean, I didn't have any money. He didn't really have any money. We're moving out there together. And we decided to try to rent an apartment. And at that time, it was kind of the height of the dot-com boom. It was 1997. And I would say 97, 98, 99 were kind of the heyday of the dot-com stuff. 99, it started all unraveling a little bit. And stuff was expensive. I mean, we were at ground zero in terms of, the infusion of venture capital and all of this, And so we found this apartment. God, what were they called? I don't remember. But not in Palo Alto, not too far from Stanford. So it would be an easy drive to work for Chad, and I wasn't sure what I would do, but I figured I'd work somewhere on the peninsula, find some kind of a job. So we went to this apartment complex, and this horrible woman showed us the place, and it was perfectly fine. It was a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, and I think it was like $12.25 a month. And so we said, okay, well, I guess we'll take it, and move in July or whatever. Well, she wouldn't let me sign the lease. She said, well, you don't have a job. And I said, well, I'm a student now, and she's like, okay, well, so, like, what? So then your parents need to sign this lease. I was like, well, I don't know that my parents are going to sign this lease, but I called them and asked. And I got on the phone with my mom, and I said, look, here's the situation. I don't have a job, so they won't let me sign the lease, and they won't let Chad have it by himself because he doesn't make enough money at his new job. So, um, and my mom says, okay, well, let me, sure, we'll sign it. Let me just talk to your dad and make sure, and they can fax it or so whatever, email it to us or whatever. So I hear my mom get off the phone and go talk to my dad, and my dad says, I'm not signing anything. To help that boy go out there and live in sin, I'm not signing anything. He can, this is God's way of telling him he shouldn't be doing this at all. So, my dad would not let my mom sign it, and I guess that's the way it works. So I think, whatever, we ended up negotiating it somehow, figuring it out without their help, and it was difficult. It was a big challenge. But it was sort of the theme of that move was basically everyone sort of, all of our friends even, really just putting up obstacles. Everyone who we told we were doing this, we'd been dating for 3 months, we were very serious, and everybody kept kind of saying, oh, why are you doing this? Don't move out there with this guy. You don't know this guy that well. On both sides, his friends and my friends, everyone was just like, what if this doesn't work out? You're going to get out there, this relationship is going to fail, and then when it fails, you're going to be miserable. And it was funny because as I started really thinking about this, it really made me, well, it made me think about a lot of things. First, I wondered, would people be asking this of a heterosexual couple? And I don't know. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But I also wondered, so what? Like everyone is so bound and determined that to make this fail somehow, to have a stake in the failure of this venture of Chad and me moving out together. And it doesn't make sense to me. I'm just like, yes, the relationship very well may fail, but it also might not. And as it turns out, joke was on them, because here we are 13 years later, and we've had one of the happiest lives I could have imagined. So it was a really sort of weird moment. And I guess in terms of the greater, theme of that I'm exploring with this podcast of what is a marriage and what is a wedding, or not what is a wedding, what is a marriage. I think that there's something about being married that you really do put that other person first. Even when the people who are around you are convinced that doing that is a bad idea. And yeah, we were 3 months into the relationship, but we were really committed to each other, and we really loved each other, and we were committed to trying to make the relationship work. And I think it's very funny how people are so risk averse that they're unwilling to try to make a relationship work, and two, just how, like, if it were to fail, that would be somehow the worst thing that could ever happen. I hate to be overly Taoist about it, but I'm just sort of like, well, life is just a path, and you are always on the path, and there are always choices ahead, and there are always choices behind. Those are the ones you can't change, and no matter what choices you make now, they could be the right or the wrong choices, and you have no idea if they're the right or the wrong choices. You can only do your best. So that was this sort of interesting moment, and when we chose each other over the cautionary tales, I suppose, was one way in which we have been married.